Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome and happy Thanksgiving to all of our American listeners as you are just hours away from putting on the foil on your fists and get ready to brawl on Black Friday, people. Come on, America. We do this once a year. We can do it. I promise you it's going to feel great. Get back to the stores, get in those lines, and get ready to beat the tar out of somebody for a new television, sound system, PS5, whatever it may be. Simeon Hein is our guest tonight. His hat is looking fantastic on him, so we'll get to Simeon here in just a little bit, but we got all of you hanging on out with us tonight. Race fan in the gold medal position, Kitty Caddywag with a silver, Marie Palmer with a bronze medal, high in the studio, Chris 716, Robert Lamoth, Luscious Jules, how are you? Luscious Jules will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Karen in the Woo Train, Frankie B, Lanita Bryant, welcome to SOR Chat. Mel WD40 is here, lubing us up for tonight's show, because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. You don't want that rigidness. When you're talking science, the brain, and remote viewing, you want to be smooth and lubed up. Let's get ready to go. Little Timmy James, I know you waved back, by the way. Super Knower, how you doing? Tarnation, welcome to SOR Chat. Digger Dog, Mike Rivers, nice to see you. Desert Rat has returned. Desert Rat will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Firewater by Design, welcome to SOR Chat. Hi, Richard Minnick. How are you? As we continue on with our roll call tonight, Digger Dog, Human Carl, a great veteran of the United States Air Force. Thank you for your service, Human Carl. We love you around here. Paramarv, how you doing? Laura Lobbs, Thomas Rock, nice to have you both here. Millennium, my man. You know what they call American Thanksgiving in Canada? True story. We call it Thursday. Thursday. Right, Millennium? You can prove that one to me. That's 100% truthful. Operation Shutdown, how are you? W. David Page, Melissa Nicole, Renee Cruz, Mama Catherine. Mwah! I love you, Mama Catherine. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving with the family. I really hope you did. I hope you give Charlie a hug for me, too. Noble Patrick, nice to see you. Ethanol, Yennefer with a soft J. Nice to see you all. Tokeland, you're early. How you doing? As we continue on with the roll call tonight, let's scroll on down. Algaray over on Twitch, deep fried 37 turkeys. He's going to be eating turkeys literally till disclosure, as he says. Scott's Life, nice to see you. And who else do we have here? We got Joey Glow. Good to have you here, my friend. As we continue on with roll call, let's move on down. Up next in our list. Ooh, we got all those people. Got all those people. Got all you. And more of you. Paulie Rotterman. Good to see you. Hello, Kimberly Burgess. Hope you're having a great evening. And Walter, good to see you here, my friend. Walter Kochabinski. Good to have you here as we continue on with roll call. Boo the Beagle. How you doing? Good to see you. J Truth Seeker, thanks for coming on in. So we continue on with roll call. There's Blue Cruise, and kicking off the super chat tonight is little Richie Minnick right there. Richard, thank you very much for the love and support each and every night, my friend. We really do appreciate it. Lovely Lavira, nice to see you. Mike Rivers, Poncho Zorch, good to have you here. Dragonfly, Katrina, pardon me. Welcome to SOR Chat. Thank you for joining us for the first time. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that bell. Carol Amario, nice to see you. Sierra, good to have you here. Let's start the radio side. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thanksgiving special with Dr. Simeon Hein, remote viewing, UFOs, aliens, crop circles. We're getting into it all tonight with him as we continue on with our roll call here right before showtime. Victoria Cummings, welcome to SOR Chat. Thank you for joining us. Excuse me. Yes, a radio guy who always clears his voice. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. It's the way it goes, though. We got 10 seconds. Reminder, Super Chat is open. And don't forget to shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. Check it on out. Throw those horns up. Let's rock. Mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out, pump, read the news wire, check out our site as well. You can follow us on X and Spaced Out Radio, Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find out more on our website. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight with our guest, Dr. Simeon Hein. Power of the Mind, Third Eye Spies, remote viewing, and so much more here on the big show. Then in hour number 3, it is jam-packed. We got Swamp Dweller, the shortened UFO report with little Timmy James. Followed that up by a Dave 101 all about UAPs are nothing but drones. Yes, they are man-made. As well, we got the weird news of the week. Let's get right to it, shall we? Dr. Simeon Hein is a guest here on Spaced Out Radio. He's been a guest a number of times. He's literally one of my favorites. I know that I say that a lot, but he's one of our top 10. Definitely one of our top 10. Not only does he have a degree in sociology from Washington State University, but this man knows how to keep a good mustache as well. His main areas of interest include nonlinear research methods, complexity theory, and technology and society. He first learned remote viewing in 1996, and he's also pursued topics like crop circle research since then. He teaches resonant viewing at the Mount Baldy Institute in Boulder, Colorado since 1997. He's an author, researcher, been on hundreds of radio shows and television shows because literally not only is he one of the best guests, he's one of the nicest men in our field as well. Let's get right to him. Dr. Simeon Hein, thank you for joining us, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Dave. Thanks a lot for having me here tonight. Thanks for that kind introduction, and welcome to everyone who's listening tonight. Happy Thanksgiving if you're in the U.S.
It is great to have you here, my friend. You know, I would say I've done almost 2,000 shows since I started Spaced Out Radio, and in just a couple of nights' time, it will be our 10th anniversary.
Yeah.
Hard to believe, 10 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
I would say, Simeon, that you are probably one of our most requested guests ever after all that time.
Thank you. think it's a pleasure, and it's an honor to bring this information. This is important topics we're talking about here. You know, I think there's a tendency, Dave, and all of our listeners know this, and viewers, there's a tendency to discount these topics, to marginalize them because they don't fit into our mainstream sense of reality. And that's why these topics keep growing in popularity, because it's just a whole different side of reality, of the universe, that we really, for a while, have not included in the mainstream public discussion. So thanks for being here, Dave, and thanks for pursuing these topics for 10 years. I appreciate it.
You love the power of the mind. I would say that is probably one of the biggest things that I have learned from you over our many conversations over the years. But the power of the mind, have we even come close to tapping into it? I mean, we're learning about, we've learned about remote viewing over the decades, but now all of a sudden over the last couple of weeks, Simeon, I don't know if you heard or not, you probably have, but there's these tapes out called the telepathy tapes, where they believe that they have done studies to confirm that telepathy is not only real, but it's happening now. Especially, they've done studies with nonverbal autistic children and how they communicate with their parents. And they believe that the parents are actually getting telepathic communication from the child to know what they want or their mood or anything like that.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. I think I saw it come up somewhere on Twitter X, and I don't think I'm familiar with it. But it's not surprising because, what we found, Dave, is what we call remote viewing is an inbuilt ability that everybody has to connect with a type of resonance, a type of quantum resonance. And it's not surprising that would be stronger, that type of empathetic connection to people in your lives, family members, and so forth. I think that's what you're suggesting. And I think that's what the research suggests, is that, everyone at some point in their lives have had some sort of gut feeling about people that are important to them, family members, partners, even pets. We were just talking about this earlier tonight at a Thanksgiving, small Thanksgiving event I was at, where you kind of get this feeling. In my case, it happened with a dog, and you get this feeling like you need to go back because they're communicating with you some way. And there was, a good reason. I think everyone's had that experience. What we call remote viewing is an extension of that natural ability. That's why, Dave, obviously, I prefer to call it resonant viewing, because the information is actually here. It's not really remote. The object may be remote, but it's broadcasting information kind of like a radio wave. And so it's really just a fascinating subject. And I'm sure, to go back to the beginning of your question, I'm sure there's a lot we haven't explored about this, partly because it's been a taboo topic within society. It wasn't very long ago in our country here in the US, just a few hundred years ago, that people were being accused of being witches, and executed from that accusation. So, and then in Europe, we were told that, 6 or 7 million women were put to death after being accused of being witches. So there's a strong innate, resistance we have to kind of get involved with these topics based on our own history as people, because if you got involved with something that would have seemed like RV in the not too distant past, it could have meant that, that was the end of you. So it's not surprising that we have this sort of innate, I would almost like an innate repulsion to not to experience it, but to talk about it in public, to kind of make it a professional subject, just because it's been such a taboo subject that has caused people, even more recently, to be ostracized and, accused of being involved with pseudoscience. But we know some of the science behind this now. So this is a real topic, and it definitely is an extension of some aspects of quantum mechanics. We can talk about this another time. I believe it's an extension of the Aharonov-Bohm effect, which was discovered in the 50s, which shows how you can have non-local communication through frequency without any electromagnetic fields, complete absence of ordinary electromagnetic energy, still something called, and some of the listeners are familiar with this idea of vector potential as a basis of communication. So I'm just saying there's science behind it, and we should be looking into it.
What's your favorite part of learning about the mind and the powers that it has? Now, I'm not talking, mathematical or what we do on a normal basis. I'm saying way out there, Simeon, remote viewing, telepathy, what other things, psychic ability, intuition, what powers are we grasping for here, or that we already have that we, as a society, most of us don't even know?
Well, I think everyone experiences this from time to time. And the most fascinating aspect of, for me, has just been teaching this since 1996. When you see people come into your classes and they're getting results fairly quickly the first and second day. And for people who don't know what this is, RV, we're talking about the ability to perceive something that you don't get the information through your physical senses. In our country here, it comes out of a military intelligence program in the 1970s to create a cadre of psychic spies, because the Soviets were doing it and the Chinese had very well developed programs in psychic capabilities of human beings to develop it for potentially hostile purposes. So obviously our government here felt, well, if they have it, we have to have it. And that's how the program started. And that's how many of us found out about it decades later in 95 when it was declassified. So when you see people come in, total beginners, and they get this excellent target contact where they've drawn the picture that's been hidden in a folder, they have this breakthrough moment. It's a kind of moment of euphoria, Dave, where you realize, like you're saying, you have some abilities there. And it happened to me when I took a class too, back at 96 at the Farsight Institute, where something happens and you can't explain how it happened. You don't know how you were able to draw that picture, even feel like you were at the target site. And you get the picture, you get the feedback, the session's done. And it's like this aha moment where you really felt like you did something that you didn't think you were capable of doing. So I think there's always a high level of excitement when you reach a new level of capability with whatever you do in your life, and you break through to the next level that you didn't even consciously think that you could do. But there it is on the page. You did it. You might not have known how the information came across, but you did it. So it shows you that there's something more going on. But there's a deeper level to this, Dave, and you know where I'm going with this. All of this type of contact that people have had or are having or will have with, what we call extraterrestrials or whoever they turn out to be, there's often a psychic precursor to that. And this is something that Jacques Vallée and I talked about once at one of the IRVA meetings, the Remote Viewing Association meetings. And he attended it, and we were just talking about UFO sightings during a break. And he said, what they're not telling you is that people have this sort of advanced perception of that type of event before it happens. And after the event has happened, they have these lingering psychic abilities that they were not familiar with, which could be alarming or interesting and exciting, depending how you look at it. You could go to one extent and call it the hitchhiker effect if it's that extreme. But at another level, it seems to me, being someone that has studied ideas related to the multiverse, that perhaps these types of experiences have opened up an aspect of your consciousness. Going back to your question, again, something that nobody told you about, you weren't aware of, just like an RV session. And you have a type of contact that seems to go on past a sighting of a craft or something that happened in your house or wherever you're living. But there's another level to it too, with cryptids and Bigfoot, which you often talk about on the show. Before people have these types of contact, they often have dreams about Bigfoot, about Sasquatch, or whatever sort of creatures they happen to be having this contact with before their actual physical contact. So, what does that suggest about our reality? That there's some sort of other level, the way information is moving around that you're not conscious of, but it's already happening, and it's sort of anticipates a type of physical contact. I think it just raises a lot of questions I think these are all good research questions because the psychic aspects of Bigfoot contact are important. I've heard this from people in my RV classes. That's actually how I got interested in the topic itself. Is my RV students in Boulder had told me about the different types of contact they had had. I'm talking over 20 years. It took a while for it to sink through my thick skull that this was important, but it did. And one of them described a type of telepathic contact where she saw the whole image of what the Bigfoot creature looked like upstairs. She couldn't see it, but her roommate downstairs saw it through the kitchen doors. And it looked exactly like what the roommate had seen. She heard the howling. And then by the time she got down, it had gone, but she remembers the detail. But it's sort of like a psychic projection. So you wondered, are certain people more capable of receiving this type of information from Bigfoot or from cryptids? Or does that type of contact open you up to another level of information, which perhaps for someone that's not familiar with these types of topics that we talk about here might be somewhat alarming or even scary. But for people that have had an RV class or familiar with these topics from your show, it's almost like an inoculation where they say, oh, I know what that is. I heard someone talking about it. So it's quite complex and quite interesting, raises a lot of interesting issues.
And here I was just going to mention the human pet dog, because I mean, they, in my opinion, are so telepathic and so intuitive to absolutely everything. I mean, they know about half an hour before you get home that you are on your way home. They don't know how to tell time. They don't know, about watching the clock that mom or dad gets home at 5:02 each afternoon. They don't know that, but yet somehow systemically they have it in their head that this is when they get home. It's like they could feel us, or when we're emotional or empathy, or look how many dogs now are trained as service dogs for people with PTSD or any type of epilepsy or anything like that. I mean, they just know.
No, they are incredible. And I've got Astro here with me somewhere. Jules mentioned it here in the chat. These dogs are incredible with their level of empathy. I'm always astounded by it, Dave. They're really capable of tuning into you. They almost know you better than you know yourself. And then there's those times like what you're saying, where they seem to almost anticipate your action, what you're going to do, even if it's sort of random. And you start to wonder, do they have this natural type of RV ability where they're just so tuned into you, and they've had, like, I think we're told 20,000 years of being around humans, if not more. I think it was extended to 26,000 years ago. A certain article I read about how long we've been together with dogs. It's a very close tuning where you sort of get that type of telepathic contact. And anyone out there who has pets knows what we're talking about here. So again, I see this sort of type of what we call psychic ability, clairvoyance, ESP, to me, that seems like part of this whole family of resonant phenomena, which, I think at another level even includes music at a more audible physical level. But at a more subtle level, it's just a sort of communication. And you can have this with partners too, family members and so forth. So it's part of a larger range of phenomena where you get non-local, and this is challenges what science has really wanted to believe in, which is more like local effects, but it's a non-local effect where it doesn't even seem to come through ordinary electromagnetic means. And again, quantum mechanics says this should be possible, and I think things like RV and this type of telepathic communication show us that it's real. And of course, Dave, there are some people that are extraordinarily good at RV, and those are some of the people that worked in, the military, CIA, DIA, Stargate program. It had different names. People like Joe McMonagle and Ingo Swan and others who were in that program that really, Pat Price, that could produce just stunning reproductions of a distant location that was like pitch perfect accurate to the extent where they could read the names of files in secure file cabinets. I mean, it really alarmed our government here at first when they realized this was possible. But then they realized, we should be taking advantage of it. But at one extreme, for people that are extraordinarily good at that, it's amazing to see the accuracy. But I want to say that everybody has that ability to some degree or another, enough for what you need in your life to get those advanced perceptions. And Dave, people who've taken my classes, just to say, what does it actually help you with? People tell me that it helps them, make decisions and get a sense of people, and if they're telling you the truth, that sort of thing, to kind of intuitively feel the veracity of something. And I think for the average person, and some people just get this feeling naturally, it just teaches you to trust your intuition. Now, I think our pets, our dogs, always trusted their intuition. They didn't go through the type of school system that you and I went through. And unfortunately, it really tries to push that away because, from being in school, you always have to justify your answer. How did you come up with this answer? The logical steps. Intuition doesn't work that way. It's a lot more holistic and instantaneous. It's spontaneous, so it just comes through. But I think we can all get in touch with that again. And I think it's important. And of course, with these other types of contact that we're talking about here, it's important in that level, that respect too.
Dr. Simeon Hein is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We got 3 minutes to go here before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Simeon, as we move the ball forward to try and connect with our higher consciousness, higher selves, this is all part of some sort of journey that we are on, spiritually, mentally, physically. How have you employed what the spirituality side has said to the scientific side, where we're still trying to figure out if there is anything to it, because science is still quite nuts and bolts?
Right. Well, I always like to take it kind of like an Einsteinian approach here. And Einstein believed that he was what we call a realist, that science should be based on what you experience in your life. It should match with your experiences in your life, Dave, so that your intuition does play an important role, and that what we learn to be scientifically true should be fit with our intuitive experience of reality. And that's why his thought experiments were so successful, just imagining what it would be like to ride on a beam of light or something, which is how he came up with special relativity and so forth. So I think this teaches you that intuition and science are not opposed, like we've been taught. It's not like logic is fighting against feeling intuition. I think at some level they match up. And I feel that when there are these discoveries, you'll usually see in some level of your life how that made sense. We're waiting for those scientific principles to click with these more esoteric, what called paranormal topics. But I believe those have a scientific explanation too, and it's only a matter of time before we see how that all works.
Are we on the path, or are we still searching for it?
No, we are definitely making a lot of progress, and it was definitely one of the themes of my more recent book, Dark Matter Monsters, that a lot of what we call paranormal is actually a feature of what's called coherent matter. Coherency being like lasers, masers, microwave equivalent of lasers. This whole family of coherent phenomena where all the particles become intercorrelated goes from ball lightning to lasers to this Aharonov-Bohm effect. And we can talk about that in the next segment. So I believe that this shows us that all of these phenomena do fit into this larger paradigm. And we can look at the patents from Lockheed Martin and the research from some of these defense contractors to show they think that this is where it's going. And of course, those of us who've been paying attention to this show and shows like this already know about this, but it's all part of the same larger class of phenomena that we call coherent matter, one step past plasma's organized, self-organized matter. That's how I think this all fits together, Dave.
Dr. Simeon Hine on Spaced Out Radio. He's one of the best, one of our most requested guests on this show. We're glad to have him here. When we return, more about remote viewing, more about everything from crop circles to UFOs, and can we communicate with these flying saucers? Next on Space Out Radio. All right, we are clear, my man.
Excellent questions, Dave. As usual, I am going to get a throat lozenge. 1 second. I'll be back in a moment.
No problem.
Yep.
What a good start. God, he's so good. He is so good. I don't know why I'm typing out names when I can just announce them now. It's force of habit. Eloise Richardson, how are you? Probably scared her by doing that. Holy cow. Calm down, Dave. Remember, my American listeners, it is time to get dressed, time to get ready, time to get in the vehicle, time to grab your baseball bat with barbed wire on it, and time to head to the shopping mall. Time to head to Best Buy, Walmart, Target, Dollar General, whatever you feel is the need. Black Friday, my friends, it comes once a year. If we want to make America great again, it starts with brawling your neighbor on Black Friday. We could do it, people. We could totally do this. Don't disappoint me the way you have the last number of years. Okay? Stop with the online stuff. Just get down to that mall. Okay? Let's make it happen. I need some Black Friday videos. And remember, even if you're just not participating, but you're going to film, please keep your phone horizontal. Horizontal. Better picture. Higher quality. Marty Burback, you should wash your mouth out with soap after talking like that. Adventures with Beth. How are you? Dave, do you have Bach money? What is Bach money? What is Bach money? I don't know what Bach money is. What is that? Bail money. Bail money. Oh, I'm protected by a border. That's fine. All right. Did you get some dinner in tonight there, Simeon?
Yes, I was lucky enough to be invited over to a friend's place for a small get-together, and it was just excellent. Turkey, stuffing, and mashed potatoes, and wonderful little desserts, and we had a lot of fun. We were talking about these topics too, so it was just a wonderful evening, and we even got old Astro inside for a few minutes. So yes, we had. Do you have an equivalent of Thanksgiving in your country? I believe you do, right?
Yeah, it's called Thanksgiving.
Oh,
it's in October. It's the first weekend of October.
Oh, it's first. You have Thanksgiving too. It's first weekend of October. Didn't know that. Yes.
You know what was great today? I will say this. I work for a guy on my daytime job who's an NFL addict. So literally I'm at work and all we are doing is watching football today. It was fantastic.
So you had your own version of Thanksgiving there.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Some of the entertainment. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's good.
You know, I wanted to mention, Jules just put up some links just briefly. I was having a special on the Kindle versions of these two books for the past couple of days. if people haven't read any of my books, they're highly discounted. The Kindle version on Amazon over, tonight. It's one of these promotions where it goes up, starts really low, like 99 cents. It goes up $1 a day till it's back to the regular price. So if anyone wants to visit any of those links, if you're curious about any things I'm talking about here, though, they're just very inexpensive tonight on Kindle if you have a Kindle reader. So
that's awesome. And we encourage all of our audience to get it. Hey, I want to say a big thank you to Richard Times 2, Human Carl, Walter, Science Bob, Bright, Mama Catherine, Latchkey for the great super chats. Very much appreciate the love and support, everybody. You guys are awesome. Here we go. Here comes the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you for joining us as we continue on talking about the power of the mind with Dr. Simeon Hine. Reminder to all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here's Dr. Simeon Hine hanging out with us. Power of the mind, the third eye. What can we actually see? What's going on? For people who may not be familiar with the power of remote viewing and astral travel, Dr. Simeon, what is it?
Right. So remote viewing is one type of psychic phenomena where you're making contact, exchanging information at a distance with a distant person, place, event. In RV, usually just describing it. And in, some of the objections to this over the years have been, well, there's no theory to explain it. Yeah, we see it in the data. Science has been a little slow on the uptake here to recognize what we were talking about in the previous half hour, which is there's another level of communication, which is sort of spontaneous and holistic, which happens between our awareness, our brains, our minds, and RV is also a body type thing. You can feel the sensations in your body, Dave. So it's not a purely mental construct, but there's another mechanism by which information moves about our reality between seemingly distant things where there's no connection and no way. They did this with experiments at SRI during the early days in the 70s where they had like a Faraday cage room. And there's no way an EM signal is going to get through that. They even took it to the extent, Dave, where they took Ingo Swan, who was one of their test subjects, the artist from New York, who had a natural aptitude for this, And I believe it was Hella Hamid down in a submarine, down in the Pacific, to test if they could still do RV underneath, a huge amount of salt water in the ocean where there's no electromagnetic signals coming through. And it still worked very well. We're told that the results were still very good. So that shows us that the information is coming across another way. So RV is this ability that we all have to get perceptions. Now, I think we all have this spontaneously. Some people have it happen during dreams at night, where you get a precognitive dream that turns out to be correct the next day, something like that. And one of the viewers who was the manager of the DIA program, Dale Graff, wrote a book about this called Tracks in the Psychic Wilderness, where he would get these sort of accurate precognitive dreams. He did a lot of a sort of adventure canoeing up in your country in Canada and other places. And he described several times where he had these sort of dreams that turned out to be correct the next day. And he used this as a viewing technique. He actually believes that this type of information comes across more easily at night when your conscious mind isn't interfering. So he created a whole dream viewing technique. It's just another fascinating aspect of this. So RV is one component of this, but as you know, Dave, this sort of extends from remote viewing into influencing. And I've seen demonstrations of this, what we call PK, psychokinesis. And for people not familiar with this, I mean, some of the best remote viewers were also very competent PK practitioners, including Ingo Swan. In fact, before he was a remote viewing test subject at SRI with Russ Targ and Hal Puthoff in the early 70s in Palo Alto, he had done work in New York City at CUNY and City University of New York with a woman named Gertrude Schmeidler, where he was able to affect the temperature of these little devices called thermistors. He was able to raise or lower the temperature of these little thermistors just by putting his awareness on them. And, you know, the labs, the Princeton labs the labs at Princeton run by Bob John, were able to do a micro PK experiments where they were able to have just ordinary people affect a random number generator to be more ones or zeros. And after 20 years and several 100,000 experiments, they showed that the odds, I think they're like trillions to one that it would be by chance. People were able to make the random number generator be less random, a few events per thousand, just a couple. But that's not supposed to happen under our normal sense of reality, that your mind is affecting a machine. But it goes beyond that to people like Nina Kaligina in the Soviet Union, this ordinary woman who was able to bend objects, move objects, make objects float. And there's YouTube videos of this, of her affecting objects in glass boxes, with a lot of Soviet scientists around looking very carefully. She's able to make things move and change and bend with some sort of energy she was emitting from her palm. And I think because a lot of these PK practitioners, by the way, it was Pear Labs in Princeton that did these micro PK studies. They were, by the way, doing this for McDonnell Douglas, the defense contractor, because they were concerned that pilots, if they got upset, might fry their electronics and affect very sensitive electronics in an adverse way. So they kind of wanted to rule this out, that the PK wasn't going to affect, if they had fly-by-wire and pilots that were just flying through, electronic helmets and this and that. They didn't want their emotions affecting, as cockpits have gotten increasingly electronic over the years. They didn't want that. So that's how the funding started there, by the way. But the interesting thing to me has always been that people that are really good at RV also have this PK ability, sort of someone like Lynn Buchanan, who was in the U.S. Remote viewing program, also still teaches classes. There's a connection there. So the reason I'm saying this, Dave, is it's not purely a mental thing. That's what I'm suggesting here. There's a biological component to RV through this other level, the PK and psychokinesis. And I've seen demonstrations of this. I've mentioned this before, but maybe not here on the show, where when I was teaching RV in Japan for a publishing company in Tokyo, several times in about 20 years ago, one of the students in the class said, you have to come to this person north of Nagasaki in this town to see this demonstration. And this person, he called himself Mr. Anderson, is his American name, but he had a Japanese name. He was able to bend Coke bottles into like a liquid with his hands, spoons, do some sort of psychic reproduction with a pen and paper that looked like RV. But the most astounding thing was when he made cigarettes and yen notes float above his palm. We're not talking physical contact anymore. Uri Geller, or obviously another example here. But I saw this myself. He was floating a cigarette over his palm, and it's just floating around. And for those of us who are Western educated, who weren't taught these things are real, it can make you like a little queasy for a second to see this. Like you're not even sure if you're seeing what you're seeing, but it's happening. It's almost like he could see my doubt. I'm standing about 15 feet behind where he's doing the demonstration. He looked at me, and the cigarette came flying across the room and went into a shirt pocket. Boom. It went here, right angle, and into it. I saw this with my eyes. I still have the cigarette. There were no wires. There was no tricks. And one of the students in my RV class knew one of the co-founders of Sony Electronics, and they had filmed this guy with their best video camera at 10,000 frames a second. And what this person told me, who was in one of my classes, the Tokyo class, said, they couldn't explain how he was doing it, but they could rule out any sort of trickery or fraud. There were no wires or any sort of, they analyzed it frame by frame, 10,000 frames a second. There was nothing there to explain how he was able to do this. I saw him twice on another occasion. And on the second occasion, the person who had introduced me to him said, why don't you show him, talk to him a little bit. I went back and he said, I'm going to affect your wristwatch. I'm going to warn you ahead of time. It could break it. He made the hands move around without touching the crown. He did have his palm over the glass, but he wasn't touching the crown, but the hands are moving exactly how many minutes he wanted them to move. So, and the final thing he did, now this is like a Tesla experiment. He ran his hand a few inches from my arm. Again, no physical contact. And I could feel pins and needles deep in the arm, like something is being radiated from his palm. So what I'm suggesting here is that I think we've gone a little astray by trying to separate these topics into separate things. Like this is RV and this is PK and this is, and these are ghosts and these are UFOs. And they're all separate conferences, separate. There is a kind of a correlation between these phenomena, like it or not. James Lukatsky points this out in his Skinwalker to the Pentagon book, right? Where these DIA analysts go out to Skinwalker Ranch. And, these things happen to them and they keep happening after they go home, back to their comfortable suburban Maryland homes. So to me, it suggests an entire range of phenomena that fit under probably one basic scientific concept. I'm calling it correlated matter, coherent matter. People, if you don't think that's what it is, I'm open to hearing other possibilities. But I do think, given these decades of research, and there was a lot more research, Dave, in the Soviet Union than over here in the US by a long shot. I mean, they had multiple KGB institutes devoted to RV. One of them, I know now from his book, Space, Earth, Human, Alexander Parkhomov, who worked in cold fusion, low energy nuclear reaction, and formally classified Soviet avionics research. He was one of the directors of their RV program. He writes about this in Space, Earth, Human. So it's just interesting that you have this kind of overlapping phenomenology, I think, as we call it. You have people going from, classified aeronautics research into these other areas, and they determine that it's real. So I think there are very interesting principles at work here. Anyway, that's kind of a long answer to your question, Dave. RV is this ability to connect, but I think that connection is really just the tip of the iceberg. Even going back to your question right at the beginning tonight, that shows our minds and bodies have, really vast capabilities that unfortunately it seems only a few people ever really develop, people who have time to do it, people that are brought into these programs that have sponsorship to kind of look at their abilities. But what it shows people ultimately is, I think this is the take-home message, Dave, is all of us probably have abilities that we're not even aware of. We don't even know our full capacity. And we often heard this idea in the past, that we're only using like 10% of our brain. We all heard that idea. I don't know if that's the exact percentage. I don't even know if that's true. But I can say, from having worked in the field of RV and explored these other topics and gone to many conferences on many different topics, that there's a lot of overlap here, and it's repeatable, and you get the sort of same phenomena happening every time, this sort of consistency, which shows us we're dealing with another state of matter that we're capable of connecting to that I don't think anyone taught us about, Dave. I don't think anyone told me about it. All the way from kindergarten to PhD, there was no break for me, and no one ever mentioned any of this stuff. This is all after graduate school, after university. So it's just, don't you think it's an interesting situation, Dave? We have all these phenomena, and we have a lot of scientific research, especially coming from China and the former Soviet Union, now Russia. We finally get on board in the 70s. And yet, in the public discourse or in, Science magazine, Nature, there's just not much. You're not going to find much about it. It's odd. It's a very strange situation because it shows us, again, going back to your question, we have a lot of potential. We're not using it. We shouldn't be tapping into this, or at least, learning about this on a more widespread basis.
But it also goes to show that this is something that the United States government has stated in the past, that they have had remote viewing programs to try and spy on the Russians, the Chinese, and any other adversary. They say it's not going on now, but usually what happens when they say it's not going on, it means the program has usually changed names.
Right. I think a lot of this stuff just went deep black. There is no way you're going to take something as inexpensive as RV. It just takes a pen and a piece of paper and someone like us sitting there with some training. You're getting a lot of information for the money. So I really doubt that this isn't being used anymore, but we were told the RV program was canceled, but I think it probably goes on, and I think it's probably evolved. I think someone recently, I think it was Uri Geller in that interview with Ross Coolhart recently on Ross's channel, that Yuri said there's a new name for it. I mean, maybe I see Bob's here. Thanks for Bob's comment tonight. I think it was called psionics or something now. So I think it's still going on. And, to go to this question you've kind of pinned here, it's not that everyone has a huge capacity to physically move, something really heavy or big, but the effect is there. And it would be interesting, based on this question that Carl's raising here, if you like something like Pear Labs, let's say you had multiple people doing the PK experiment. By the way, what Pear Labs found was, this is kind of interesting, going back to your question about dogs and so forth. They found that what they call bonded pairs, couples, people, if they brought them into the lab, they could move the needle. And they had multiple PK experiments, by the way. It wasn't just a random number generator. They had pachinko machines and little robots that would go on a table. You were trying to influence it so it didn't fall off the table as much, that sort of thing. They found that bonded pairs had a bigger effect than a single person, which again suggests it's like an empathetic, telempathetic resonance effect that is shared between people. So if we had 100 people doing it once and we had some way to measure it, that would be a very interesting experiment. I mean, I believe there was that Uri Geller demonstration once where he did this over the radio, and people reported their spoons bending on the other side of the radio. I've heard people say they saw this themselves happen in their own, with their own spoon. So it's just interesting. What is the range of this effect? How strong is it? Initially, the U.S. government was afraid that these Soviet psychics, and there were a number of them, and from what I read in Parkhomov's book, some of them are pretty good. Even though it's not as consistent as you may like, our government was afraid they might bend tank barrels or something like this, really affect objects. It doesn't turn out to be that type of effect. It's not as strong. Even remote influencing is not as strong as you might believe, but the effect is there. It's definitely there, and I've seen it demonstrated right in front of my eyes, so I know it's real. But here's one other aspect of it. Apparently, this guy in Japan did not want me to publicize his location, his name, no interviews. And I asked him why. He said he found if you attracted too many skeptics in the room at the same time, the effect was not as strong. Interesting, right? If you are surrounded by 20 skeptics, and I think I found this when we had Fox News and others come up to test our viewing skills, when you get a lot of negative people around, that energy field in and of itself, I'm just going to share what I think is going on here. In and of itself, it seems to dampen the effect because it's a field effect. And if you have people who are saying, no, it's not going to work, it does actually seem to go more in that direction, which is why this guy said, I don't want any excess publicity. I'm happy just with these small groups of people coming to see me.
The reason why Carl's comment about moving the chair is for our radio audience who doesn't know.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
During the break, when we're on radio break, I'll leave my studio at the top of the hour. And one of the big things that the audience is trying to do is kind of mass manifest movement of my chair to see if you can actually move it.
No. So do you have a very precise way to measure if it's moved, a fraction of a millimeter or something? Probably not.
No.
But the Pair Labs say there is an effect from multiple devices. There, no doubt about it. I've talked to them. I've even asked one of their methodology statistician people. I said, "Is there any alternative explanation to kind of explain away what you found over 20 years?" He said, "No. We tried to debunk our own results. We couldn't find a way to do it." So I think there is an effect. If you had a very fine, precise way to measure that, it would be interesting to test this. I mean, I think Uri Geller demonstrated this. So it would be, I think it's an interesting experiment, Bob. I mean, Dave, to go ahead and see if it moves even the slightest amount, if you could get the precision equipment to measure that.
Oh, we're definitely trying to manifest this. I encourage it to see if it actually happens. Just hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
Just like the aliens landing in my backyard and allowing me to fly the craft. That hasn't happened yet, but we're manifesting.
Well, let me say one thing about these spoon bending parties they had in the RV groups. People, they were famous for these spoon bending parties. I've been at some of these at the IRVA meetings. Usually what happens is nothing happens, and all of a sudden there's a recrystallization of that metal. It bends over. So it's sort of the thing is you might not see it, and then at some point it happens. So yet is the correct word.
We're going to see. We got 2.5 minutes before we have to go to break. At the top of the hour, Dr. Simeon Hein is our guest tonight. Do you think we have the mental capability and power to summon UFOs? Many people have claimed they've done it.
I've been out with Dr. Stephen Greer a number of times. And the times I've been out with him, I have seen things that I still to this day cannot explain. I've seen luminous objects come over. The first time was in Laramie, Wyoming at the Rocky Mountain UFO conference sometime around 2000. And we went out there with 80 people after having done his RV squared technique. It's a kind of inverse RV, Dave, where you send out a signal to some pilot out there who has some time, and you show them in the universe where you are in the solar system on the earth, and you broadcast this out, and then you vector them in. You find them with your imagination, your RV mind, and you send out a signal to them. Again, I'm generally skeptical of many of these things, but it worked. We went out with 80 people. As soon as these clouds broke apart from a thunderstorm, a very bright light came over us, and a laser-like light shone down on the group, which was disturbing, I would say. It was bright, and it was like a type of laser you'd see at a concert. And this is way before drones existed as we know them now. And it was silent, and that light came down on us, and I saw this with my own eyes. So did about 40 people in the group. Half of the group was facing the other way. It was there for about 5 to 10 seconds. But so I have seen an example where this really works, and we've tried this a couple different times with our RV group, sometimes on weekend workshops, and we've had some interesting events happen. So I would say, yes, I think it works. It may not work every single time the way you want it, but I've seen examples where it does work.
Well, you know what? I think it does work too. I really do. I've seen some pretty strange things. I do have some questions for you regarding that. And I know we're running out of time, but I will say it briefly here. Why is it when you're staring up the sky, maybe looking for UFOs or whatever, you can look all over the sky, but your eyes keep taking you to this one part in the sky. Like you think something is going to happen in that area. That happens to me all the time. I cannot understand why it happens. There's no reason for it to happen, but I could be looking everywhere and I'll just keep going back to that spot. Like if I leave that spot, I'm going to miss something happening. Simeon, I will get your answer to that when we return on Spaced Out Radio. Dr. Simeon Hein, Power of the Mind, and so much more on Spaced Out Radio. Coming up in hour number 2. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, Doc, I'm going to put you back in the green room, and then I'll bring you back when I get back, okay?
Great. See you back in a moment.
All right. See you in a bit. Be right back, everybody. Bring the dog back. Thank you tonight to Necessary Dialogue. Human Carl ×2. Richard ×2. All of a sudden I want to sneeze. La Science Bob, Latchkey, Mama Catherine. Thank you. And Walter as well for the great super chats. Hi Space, how you doing? Good to have you here. And Cosmic Joe, good to see you. Here we go. Here comes hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for taking the time to tune us in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Saccade. Saccade is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Dr. Simeon Hein is our guest tonight on the big show. We're talking about the power of the mind. And Doc, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me here tonight. Great topics. It's always a lot of fun to talk about these things.
Right before the break, I asked you a big question about the power of the mind.
Yeah, this is an interesting aspect of doing these CE5. That's what they're called, CE5 exercises, close encounters of the fifth kind, where you get this type of contact. How much of it is due to your particular awareness at the time? How much of it is from the other side, whatever consciousness is there, contacting? Can you intentionally see them in a certain part of the sky? It reminded me, Dave, do you remember that time we did this show a couple of years ago? And I was visiting one of my RV colleagues in central Washington. And we were out there in her backyard. And during the break, Dave, something like 80 to 100 red lights came over to the south. I remember mentioning it to you. It was it looked like one solid object. People would say, were they a fleet of drones or something? Well, it was completely silent. There was no sound. And I could almost believe it was like some sort of response to us doing a show together. Is they're going to say, here we are, and we're flying right by you just as the break is over. And it was the most red lights I've ever seen in the sky. I would say it spanned about a mile of sky. It was a big chunk of sky they were all moving as one. So, I'll never know exactly what that was, but interesting that the synchronicity here, it happened just as we're doing the show. I mentioned to you, and you said, well, why didn't you stop while it was happening? So our jaws were just dropping. What are we looking at there?
But the critics will say, Simeon, that was Starlink.
Starlink doesn't have 100. First of all, I would say this was about 10 years ago. I don't even know if these sort of Starlink things existed. I don't think they have 100 units connected together. Those Starlinks are what are those? 10 to 15 in a line. We're talking about a huge chunk of sky being occupied, whatever this thing or these things were. And those sort of objects were seen in my state here in eastern Colorado. Remember 2019, 2020? When you had this. So I was looking into that again recently because, they were called drones. And I think that's our first tendency when we see something like that, that's, illuminated and we can't see the outline, doesn't look like a solid craft. We call them drones. But on reevaluation of these Colorado drones, they were bigger than what we call drones to be. They were, for the most part, silent, and they were really fast, and they stayed aloft for hours. When we finally had access to the internal Air Force emails, from those emails, which I think someone FOIA'd, they said they didn't know what they were. The Department of Transportation, Elaine Chao, came out and said, we never identified them. But here's the most interesting thing, Dave. They had appeared, I believe, sometime in the 60s, way back in the 1960s, if I'm not mistaken about the date, same sort of objects. So if we're arguing these are some sort of common technology like Starlink, and yes, there are more and more of these sort of internet satellites up there. I mean, did we have that in the 60s? Same sort of objects in eastern Colorado. I think you need to consider the possibility. I don't have the evidence for this. I mean, are these some sort of objects from an intelligent consciousness that is visiting us from time to time? And what I saw that night when we were doing that, our show here about maybe 10 years ago or so, I mean, did they show up from time to time before we had those types of technology? So yeah, there are counter explanations, but that was a darn lot of lights up there at the same time in fixed positions, moving very quickly across the sky. So anyway, that's just you mentioned certain parts of the sky. I'll never forget that night when we were doing the show. And then that part of the sky was like just at the right time. Anyway.
I think that, like, getting back to the original question that I asked you right before the break, there is something like when I'll go out on my patio and I will literally stare up at the stars and I will try and manifest something to fly over. And a lot of times, I do try to do the scientific part, and I believe it's 2.5 hours after sunset that the sun is down low enough on the earth that nothing in the sky flying outside of the International Space Station and the stars of the moon should be actually lighting up because of where we are.
Right.
So if I'm outside, like let's say if I go outside the studio right now, we've been in darkness since about 5 o'clock tonight. And if I go outside and all of a sudden see satellites flying by, or what I would perceive as satellites flying by, am I seeing a satellite or am I seeing something different?
Well, we don't actually know. I mean, I think my mind has changed about this just listening to some of these congressional hearings recently. We had one just about 2 weeks ago where you hear about these swarms of objects, like was over Langley Air Force Base recently. And we heard that this was happening again this week over US bases, I believe, in the UK. I mean, my mind, like many others, is immediately going to jump to think that it's, in this day and age, these are drones. Yet all of those bases have counter drone technology. It is not legal to go over these controlled airspaces. I took a private pilot ground school course once a while back, and I know some of those regulations. It's highly illegal to fly over any Air Force base or anything like this. They have this counter drone technology. They have this counter drone technology on Navy ships where we've also had these swarms of objects. And you would have thought by now they would have immobilized one of these so-called drones and, had a little press conference. Look, we've got a Chinese drone here or something that was harassing our ship or our base. We haven't seen any of that evidence. And you start to wonder whether they really are, like we're getting the gist of. I mean, even for me, you're getting the gist in these House and Senate hearings that these are genuine UAP, what we used to call UFOs, kind of miniature versions of this, mini UFOs. Stan Gordon from the Investigator, Pennsylvania, you've had him on the show.
Yes.
He talks, you look, he's got a website where he posts recent cases. One of the cases recently is about mini UFOs. So to answer your question, I think many of us, when we go out and look for these objects and want to see them, if we're doing a C5, we sort of expect them to be structured craft. And by the way, I saw one of these with my mom in the Everglades in the 1970s, early 70s. I was just about 12 or 13 at the time. And this object was huge, and it was right over us. And we had really strong bird watching binoculars. And there was nothing earthly about that object. It was both amorphous and structured at the same time. It's very hard to describe what these things look like. And went from a totally stationary position to moving in a cloud once we started looking at it with the binoculars. I mean, totally still. I thought it was a full moon at first. And then all of a sudden, that sort of very strange acceleration they have, like this sort of instant acceleration right into a cloud. We expect them to look like that. I've seen those types of objects, triangular shaped craft and so forth, at various times in my life. But I want to suggest to people tonight that the objects may not always appear as an ordinary, large, structured flying saucer, the classic 1950s saucer shape. They could be a lot smaller. And these objects, some of them even like the Tic Tac object, which I think was more like a larger object. But I think they may come in many different forms. And then, Dave, we have to accept the fact that our visual field of perception is limited to a very narrow spectrum of electromagnetic frequencies, right? Just like radio waves that we're familiar with. They're tuned, and our eyes are tuned to a very specific set of frequencies. So if we go back to John Ramirez's comments, people are familiar with John Ramirez, former CIA, I believe was missile analyst. He, in some of his interviews a few years ago, talked about the keyhole satellites picking these things up coming into Earth's atmosphere. And he said that they were able to detect them coming in as what he called stealth plasmas. Literally invisible to the eye, but visible in the infrared spectrum. I mean, and here we're getting into quite a sensitive topic, I would imagine, with what satellites are capable of perceiving. But he said to us, and he said he was allowed to say this, he said no one had told him back at the agency not to talk about this, that they have a stealth form. So what I'm suggesting is they could be around and you're not going to see them. Dave, you're not literally going to see them with your eyes because they're out of the range of visible light. And this is going off what people like Ramirez are telling us. Also, again, in the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book, they talked about these sort of shadow orbs, dark orbs, things that seem to absorb light rather than give off light. And almost like sort of miniature black hole singularities right there in front of you. I mean, that's in the Lukatsky book. So I think we need to consider the possibility that some of the interaction we have with these types of craft and so forth, maybe it's just not all in the visible spectrum.
I often wonder with this whole drone thing that is going on right now. I believe that this is some sort of setup. I don't believe these are UFOs. I don't believe that for a second. UFOs, in my opinion, are everywhere. We're not seeing them everywhere. We're focused the cameras on military bases, airports. We're not focusing on the overall aspect of it all. And I think something is at play here right now that we may not be very, very attuned to what's going on. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I admit it seems like a confusing situation just because drone technology has advanced so much just in the past 20 years, right? Where these are affordable and you can create your own swarms and so forth. But based on the testimony from these witnesses at the congressional hearings, it doesn't seem like that's what they are. And that's why I'm suggesting that they're a miniature type of UFO, UAP, like some sort of scout craft, like maybe their version of drones, just with the ability to go really fast speeds and make 90-degree turns and do things that our drone technology doesn't use. So maybe there's some sort of convergence going on. But when you use the word setup, I mean, what sort of setup are we dealing with? We're told that there are a lot of videos of these objects. And from some of the comments of these senators and Congress people, having seen these that we're not authorized to see as the public, right? For a variety of reasons, they say they can't, show them publicly because it would reveal too much of the capacity and capabilities of satellites and the sensor equipment on aircraft and so forth. I mean, we're told from people who have seen these that these objects are doing things which our technology doesn't have the capability to do, the speeds that they're capable of moving at, that they are clearly some other person's technology. I'm just repeating what people who've seen these videos tell us is when you look at these, you realize this is not our stuff, okay? This is the capacity, the capabilities of it are way beyond, and it's clearly someone else's. Now, there's discussion always comes up, obviously. Do they belong to our adversaries? And we're told over and over again that there's simply no evidence it's from our earthly adversaries. I think they've said, some of the people who've retired from these military and intelligence agencies, they would prefer it be from our adversaries because that would mean it would be identifiable and we could eventually back engineer it and reverse it. But they're telling us, I mean, this has been a consistent message. Whether it's true or not remains to be seen. But what we're being told from so-called witnesses, people who've testified in front of Congress going back a year or 2 years now, to the Grush testimony, is that from their side, and these are people with pretty high levels of access, even people like Grush who are, presidential briefers, that this is not it's not earthly technology. And I've talked to people who've looked at this technology, people who haven't come forward yet. And they tell me it's 1,000 years ahead of our technology. When you look at it under an electron microscope, the level of engineering in the materials, and I think this is where the proof is, Dave. The level of engineering in these materials is at an atomic level. We don't have that capacity to arrange atom by atom to create a type of technology. It's obviously, we've heard this before, the isotopic proportions of the materials don't match what we find on Earth. So we would suggest it's from another part of our galaxy, and that the materials seem to have been created in a zero-G environment. So based on the people I've talked to, it's at least 3-4 people. This is where it gets, this is the crux of the matter, is these materials, attempts to reverse engineer them. Obviously, it's very serious and it has really big implications. And there's just a huge level of secrecy around it. And I will tell you, the people I've talked to are literally afraid to say more than just a little bit to me based on the NDAs they've signed. These are very serious legal documents that could get you in a lot of trouble if you open your mouth. You've heard these witnesses say this at these congressional hearings, right? They say, well, I can tell you in a skiff, but I can't say it out loud right now. And this is what they all said when we were, the questions were, what did you see? What sort of the particular crashes? So I think the answer to your question would be to look at some of this evidence of the materials themselves. Don't you think, Dave, to tell us, are these terrestrial objects, or does the weight of the evidence suggest it's 1,000 years ahead of us? It's not something we know how to make, which would suggest visitors from another place outside the Earth or some other intelligence on the planet. We always assume we're the kind of sort of the top dogs here, some other native intelligence to the planet that we're not very familiar with, something like that. Because these people I've talked to are unequivocal about it. They tell me, no, this is definitely not our stuff. And that's all I'm going to tell you. But I know for a fact, as an engineer, I know these materials, it's not ours. That's just what I've been told multiple times. And these are people that have worked, for, Fortune 500 companies, aerospace companies that we're all familiar with.
Well, I tend to think that there are things out there we can't explain. Completely. I 100% agree with you. I've seen enough of them with my own eyes to know that there is something out there that is flying that we don't tend to know. And, when you live in the middle of nowhere like I do, where there's no military bases around, you don't expect to see strange aircraft with a U.S. Air Force or U.S. Navy insignia on it. Although there was that one time this summer, I actually looked up at the sky and saw a B-1 bomber flying over towards Alaska. That was kind of cool. Really appreciated that. However,
yes, we've got your back, Dave. We got your back.
Well, that's what we do here, because Lord knows dear leader up here isn't supporting our military. And God bless all the military and the veterans out there. Thank you very much for your service. But these drones that seem to be picking up in activity, though, don't you find it a little suspicious that all of a sudden, we have these hearings and, and now all of a sudden they're everywhere and everybody's writing about them and photographing them and videoing them. There's one again on Thanksgiving here where there was allegedly 4 drones spotted over Washington, D.C. If you take a picture of a drone far enough away, it's probably a helicopter or an airplane.
No, usually they're conventional explanations for, the vast majority of sightings. And my mind goes there too, Dave, just like anyone. You're thinking, all of a sudden we're having the hearings and then all around these reports. And yet the other part of my thinking is going along the lines that maybe this intelligence, which is the third player here, are deciding to reveal themselves a little more in synchrony with public hearings. If they do exist and they know about us and they're aware of our conversations, shows like this, politics, they pay attention to this, it would also make sense that they would amp up their activity at times when there is already a lot of focus on this. So that's the other part. Now, whether it's one or the other, Dave, honestly, I don't know, but I'm just not discounting the other possibility that this is this other intelligence, extraterrestrial or whatever it turns out to be. Sort of, they did flyovers over DC in 52, right? Those happened over a week. This is well before you could say they were drones, right? Could you say they were drones back in 52? I don't think so. Over the White House, over some of the most secure areas around Washington, D.C. What I would think after many years, Dave, is if those had a prosaic conventional explanation, we would have seen some evidence by now that was just something obvious like a helicopter. But that helicopter explanation was even used over these flyovers over the northern tier nuclear facilities, right? 60s, 70s. And the official report said enemy helicopters, that could go hundreds of miles an hour and were hovering over there. There was no evidence they were helicopters, and they moved at speeds that just defied what helicopters could do in the 60s and 70s. So we don't know for sure, but I don't think you should immediately just jump to the simplest explanation, because that's often proven to be incorrect in the long run. And again, I would expect some sort of evidence. It is this drone anti-drone technology is not hard to do.
Good to be another 30 minutes on Space Out Radio. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we are clear, my man.
Dave, it's interesting. Just on this conversation, I heard someone who had served in one of the Virginia military bases respond to this recently on one of the nighttime talk shows. He said he served, I think it was at Norfolk or one of the big naval bases that we have in Virginia.
Yeah.
And he said if that had happened while his security team was out there, they would have taken them out. They're authorized to take them out. He said he cannot believe, if these are drones, Dave, that no one is just removing them over. They're not supposed to be flying over the bases there, that someone just didn't use that EM technology to neutralize the electronics and have them drop out of the sky. or use some other method to take. And he said, if they were what you're saying, I'm not saying it's wrong, but why does it seem that they're so defenseless against this? That's my question, Dave.
Well, and the fact is, if this is an adversary, and I'll talk a little bit more about this on my Dave 101 in about an hour. But if they are an adversary, they're not going to go in with blinking lights on. If
Right.
it's China or Russia or Iran or the space pirates that Ted Cruz talks about, they're not going to be hovering there with their lights blinking at 200, 300 feet.
I don't think so.
Okay. So that leads me to believe one of two things. It's either alien or it is some sort of local technology that they are testing their systems out to see how long until people react to this. Now, I'm not denying that things have happened. Not denying that at all. Robert Salas and the nuclear weapons, I think that happened. I really do believe that. I believe that, a lot of the situations have happened with UFOs, not UAP, UFOs. And I believe, though, that what we're seeing here with all of a sudden this great influx is a way to keep money going into the budget because fear sells
Right.
budgets.
Interesting idea. I see you're saying it's the tail wagging the dog because it creates budget enhancement. Yeah, that's a good one, Dave. I'm open to that possibility too. Yeah, we know governments do this sort of thing. False flag operations. And yeah, while during the hearings, the counter argument to that is something like what Jay Stratton told us at the Vernal Conference last September. The Phenomenon? You've been there, right? So you know about Phenomenon. Yeah. So he said that the real problem for the Navy and the Air Force with these objects showing up in their training spaces is that these jets cost tens of thousands of dollars an hour to prep and get going and fly, all the way up to something like $30,000, $40,000 for the F-35. The cheapest one to operate is the A-10 Warthog, old school stuff. And it gets more expensive as you go up to F-16s and F-22s and all this, right? So he said the problem for the military is every time they have to cancel these exercises, they've just blown through hundreds of thousands of dollars at a minimum because they're getting all prepped up and the planes are all fueled and everything's ready to go and they're flying. They got to come back because there's something in the middle. Objects that we're told split these formations down the middle. I think it's quite a mystery here. Would they really do that? And just do that during training exercises where people could get hurt? If these are literally solid objects that are flying up there, I don't know. I just think it's a good question. And I think Jay Stratton said he went sort of the other direction from your point of view, which is that it's so disruptive. The military would have to be doing that to themselves, Dave. And then maybe they would. Maybe you're right. And sometimes they do this because the funding budgets. I'm not totally saying that could be wrong. But that's what we're saying here. If this is a conventional explanation, you're right. Adversaries are not going to linger there with their blinky lights. Then if we're doing this to ourselves, then it would be like the military almost like breaking down, doing, putting their own service.
Are they breaking down or are they restructuring?
Well,
right. I mean, you think about it, UFOs or UAP, pardon me, are a budding multi-trillion-dollar industry. Trillions.
Yes.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to come.
It's great discussion.
Thank you to Richard times 2, Human Carl times 2, Walter, Science Bob, Lala,
yes,
Mama Catherine, Latchkey, Necessary Dialogue, and Cosmic Joe for the super chats. Greatly appreciate the love. We're coming back here in 5 seconds, everybody. Just sit tight. go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. UFOs to crop circles. Dr. Simeon Hein is our guest. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Reminder to all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/spaced out radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Dr. Simeon Hein here not only works on the power of the mind, but he also researches crop circles. What are they? Who's making them? And why does wheat bend in weird ways? Dr. Simeon, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave. You know, crop circles, just like these other topics we're talking about tonight, RV and related subjects, I mean, for me, were one of the biggest surprises. I wouldn't have believed in most of what we're talking about here tonight if I hadn't experienced these things for myself. It just happens that people who spend years in academia, your mind kind of just focused in, on conventional subjects. And there's not a lot of openness to really consider these types of topics because they're just so off in a wild direction, which hasn't really been looked at. So science has become unusually tame in the past couple decades, I'm afraid. But, crop circles, as, the viewers know, these are patterns that appear in wheat crops, different types of grain crops. They often have a lot of symmetry to them. They can form very quickly, and they are often associated with anomalous light phenomena, sometimes ball lightning. My understanding of crop circles, based on my experience getting involved in 97. Now, how did my interest in this start, Dave? We had some crop circle targets over at Farsight, and I was very curious what these were. And the only way to find out was to go over to the UK and walk around in these to get my feedback. Every time you do an RV session, you want to get your feedback. So I went on a tour. Ron Russell from the Aurora area, I met him at a UFO conference in Denver, and it was a very good presentation about this crop circles, history of the phenomenon, and so forth. And I went with him. And the first one I saw was this huge fractal Coke snowflake shape, which is something I had studied in my dissertation and so forth. So what we realized when we were over there is the original phenomena was, as Terrence Meaden suggested, and I've seen some of these myself, associated with plasma vortices from the atmosphere, whirlwinds, structured craft, Tully saucer nests, as Dave Bauer, part of that Doug and Dave, two guys from the pub. One of them was an artist from Australia, or had spent time in Australia. And you had this phenomena in the Tully area over several years in the 60s of these swirls happening in reeds in marshes when people saw the discs. Okay. And even, there is no doubt in my mind, I've talked to witnesses, some of them are in Black Swan ghosts, who have seen UFOs flatten meadows. And they told me flat as a pancake, which sounds an awful lot like what we've seen around crop circles. But at the same time, people did get involved, Doug and Dave and others, imitating these natural formations. So by the time I got involved, Dave, I would say at least 95% of those circles that I saw from 97 onward were most likely, human-made from artists, graphic designers that realized they were getting a lot of attention on their art. Even if they were anonymous, it was fun to make these and imitate these original formations. But the big surprise for those of us researching these is we found this, these strange electromagnetic effects in man-made formations too. So we learned that these are not hoaxes, unless the people were just, creating them to fool people in some way. But the groups we met believed that crop circles were like what they called natural magic. There was something going on in those swirls of wheat, Dave. in those vortical patterns, even if they were imitating what was done by a plasma vortices coming down from the atmosphere, the Terence Meaden idea, which there was some evidence for, but even Terence Meaden said these are rare. Maybe there's some years where none of them are created this way. So it's sort of rare that way. Even if they were imitating that swirl, there was something about a very precisely made crop circle that would short out our batteries, cameras, create strange artifacts on our film cameras, which we initially used before we switched to digital, make the digital cameras go really wonky, something I've never saw anywhere else at a beach or if you're in the mountains. I asked farmers if they ever had these electromagnetic disturbances in their ordinary fields. They would say no. So we learned that something about highly fractal geometric toroidal type patterns in wheat and other grain crops would create static charges that were different than the field, which seemed to create other very strange effects on electronics. So in short, what I'm saying, Dave, is the man-made ones turned out for us, at least our research group, Team Cosmos, as we called ourselves. The teams had different names. We just called ourselves Team Cosmos. And our formations, by the way, were for the most part, we would find farmers, pay them, and use their fields for a few days and take our equipment in. We found very anomalous static patterns in grain crops once they were flattened, which suggested to me that whatever intelligence made these original formations, some of the ones that were intelligently made, and there's this wonderful book, which I have right over here, The Secret History of Crop Circles by Terry Wilson, where he goes through the whole history of these formations. And I've been counting the numbers of ones made by UFOs and flying discs. And it's quite a few over the years where you had witnesses seeing discs, UFOs, before we called them UAPs, UFOs, good old UFOs, hovering over fields. This has happened in the US as well. Remember the Delphos, Kansas case where Ted Phillips investigated, J. Allen Hynek's assistant. You get these strange markings in soil in fields, imitating that. Even if humans went out and imitated that, it would create very strange effects. So the whole subject turned out to be much more complex than I would have thought.
Do you think that these are being created as some sort of geometry by UFOs, as maybe some sort of star map or signs of where we're supposed to be looking? Or do you think this is what many people believe is some sort of natural phenomenon?
Well, they do seem to be a type of communications if they are made by some visitors or something using some sort of energy technology. But what I did see is that all of us have a tendency to project our ideas. These are like blank slates. So we can sort of project our ideas onto them. At the same time, if you do spend enough time on any subject, you're going to find new principles and ideas that you never thought of before that really breaks new ground. So whether they're literally star maps, some of them looked like that. I have to say, I think the human circle makers, I know for a fact they would attend crop circle conferences and they would listen to what some of the presenters would say and create those sort of patterns the next season or even the same season. I know it sounds a little devious to do something like that, but some of the circle makers would do that. So they would seem like an answer to some question that a particular researcher would have, or like a star map. So some of the human-made formations had those characteristics. They were almost sort of plain to our conversation about crop circles that we would have, in journals and online and at these conferences. But other ones really did seem to show interesting information. I mean, I was, one of the things I studied in my graduate career was fractal geometry, self-similar patterns. It's built into all our cell phones now, these fractal antenna structures, which allow a phone to perceive a wide range of frequency in a kind of limited space. And some of those patterns were like fractals. I couldn't even quite make sense of. It was almost like they were irrational numbers or something. They were not easy to figure out. So I would have to answer, this may not be the most satisfying answer, Dave, but the phenomena as a whole, the whole phenomenon, if you take the natural made ones, which were a smaller percentage by the time the 90s came along when I got involved, the man-made ones and some of these natural ones, it definitely pushed our minds to think about all the possibilities. And it encouraged people to have this conversation, whether we were having contact with other types of intelligence. So it's almost like no one was really in control of the whole thing, Dave. Not the researchers, not the circle makers. And the whole thing kind of evolved for a long time into very interesting conversations, which we wouldn't have had. So it definitely had a paradigm busting effect. But even if people had a role in that, that is not something that's entirely new. Artists have always kind of created art in sort of secret. You remember the camera obscura, one of these sort of artistic techniques that artists had several hundred years ago to create very interesting artistic effects, but it wasn't clear how they were doing that when you looked at the final painting or something. So I don't think secrecy is really something that's new to art. And I still think it can have a beneficial effect, even if you didn't know exactly what was going on. Now, I have to say this. There were times when we put up signs on our demonstration circles that we had paid the farmer and this was a mathematical project or something totally above board, and people didn't believe us. They would say, well, how do you explain the bent nodes over there, the swollen nodes? And how do you explain how the wheat's doing this? And you know what? We didn't really know. We knew we had made it, but we don't know what happens to the crop from the sun. Now it's flattened. And they would say, well, you obviously didn't make it. So even if we said and documented it, they wouldn't believe us. So these things sort of have a life of their own. But certainly the whole crop circle phenomena showed us that, at least for me, that there were anomalous electromagnetic effects. And I built electronic kits as a kid, just as a hobby, with my paper route money, from Heathkit and Radio Shack. So I knew how electronics could work. There was no reason you should get solder joints melting in video cameras, batteries completely draining in seconds, completely charged batteries. There are some important, physics, engineering principles at work there, effects at work there, which we still don't have a very good understanding of. But what it seemed to show is that certain types of symmetric shapes could affect the electromagnetic field in ways that Maxwell hadn't thought of. There was some anomalous effects there, almost like something else was going on beyond standard electromagnetic ideas that we're used to, pointing vectors and so forth. Simply from, we found it mostly in the circular shapes, simply from a circular shape or a fractal pattern could completely discombobulate your camera. And then when you factored in all the sort of telepathic experiences people would have in crop circles, in some cases anticipating circles that hadn't shown up yet, or circle makers sort of intuiting what groups out there were meditating on that night without having talked to them, making that exact shape. Again, going back to the theme of what we're talking about tonight, another level of information flow that was definitely non-ordinary and really interesting to participate in.
This is a topic that interests so many people, yet it seems to be one of those subjects that gets looked over on the entire phenomena. And we don't really hear much about it anymore, Simeon. I mean, back in the 90s, early 2000s, everybody was talking about crop circles. And now it seems like a dying fad. Why do you think that is?
Right. Well, so when I got involved, there were these types, Dave, that were 800 feet across. This is from, I believe, the year 2000 up at Milk Hill, one of the largest crop circles ever to appear. You're talking like a lot of circles in there, 800 feet across. The first one I ever saw was the Coke Snowflake by Silbury Hill, this large ancient man-made earth mound, the largest in Europe. That was 300 feet across. So there was a time when a lot of these showed up. And I think after a while, for a variety of reasons, there were fewer and fewer of them. So I think it's simply the amount of circles that were out there. And some of the farmers in the UK at the time started to mow them down pretty quickly. They were tolerant at sort of the beginning, and they'd put up collection boxes, and sometimes they would make quite a bit from those collection boxes. That sort of Julia set by Stonehenge in 96, I think the farmer collected something like 40,000 pounds, which is a lot more than the value of that amount of wheat, because people trample the wheat walking in and so forth. So they started to cut them down pretty quickly around 2006, 7, 8, and became less tolerant of the whole thing. So the phenomena kind of changed. That's not the only reason. And some of the human circle makers, it's a pretty intensive exercise, felt that they had done enough of them. So there are fewer of them around. But initially, you had a lot of patterns like this that would just show up there, and you could walk around in them. And this is kind of in the early days of the internet. So we didn't always have GPS and tools to locate them. Sometimes, like this particular circle at 5 Field Down, Devil's Den formation. And I saw this circle knock out 3 devices in the span of about 20 minutes. You watch people walk in, all of a sudden cameras stop working. That one, we had to walk around for several hours to find it. We knew we had a map. This is old school stuff. You had a map, sort of over here, like detective work, really interesting. So there were times when these would show up and you could go in them, and there are just fewer and fewer of these nowadays. But it's sort of like anything else. These phenomena have waves, and they have peaks and troughs. And those 90s days when I got involved was one of the peaks where there would be hundreds around. And again, the most amazing thing would be to see these strange effects and the types of orbs that would be around these formations occasionally, ball lightning, occasional UFOs. I was even told, Dave, by circle makers that they would see these UFOs, UAP, small ones, scouting out their circles as they were making them, literally miniature black triangles and things like this. And if this is true, you got to wonder who was that checking out these human-made circles.
That I don't know.
We don't know.
The one thing that I am convinced is that I don't believe it's a natural phenomena. Yes, the Earth works in mysterious ways, but I don't think it's natural, number one. And number two, I don't think that it is a couple of drunkards from a tavern in London who are making crop circles in Saskatchewan or in Wyoming or, in the farm fields of Spain or wherever it may be.
Right. And I'm not saying that they all are made that way, but honestly, a lot of people came back from the UK and started attempting to imitate those over here. But again, if you go back to this book, The Secret History of Crop Circles by Terry Wilson, he really documents these patterns going back decades, I think, before the last century even, and they are unexplainable, and they're often seen around strange light phenomena and so forth, even animal mutilations. I was talking to a farmer from Alberta once, kind of in your neck of the woods, at least relative to the United States. And he said, first we had crop circles and then we had animal mutilations. For real. And this is not, unheard of. These sort of patterns do appear. Are they, is it something to do with their propulsion system of craft or something like that? I was at a conference called Snippy 24, which was about near Alamosa, Colorado, a couple months ago, about the Snippy lady horse incident from 67, right? When a couple witnesses saw an object come down and the horse looked like it had just been bleached. We saw pictures of the bones, like in just seconds. It had been completely stripped of skin, bleached, like it was exposed to some very strong energy or something. But even that case, there was something like crop circles seen in not very far away from the remains of Snippy, the horse. And by the way, that conference will be open to the public, I'm told, within a year or two. It was just sort of still a small family conference. And I was looking at the effects of ball lightning on some, relation to some of these animal injury cases, which is, by the way, documented going back 100 years. But the main point is you can find documentation of these patterns, and that crosses over into the UFO UAP realm. So I'm going to say it's a mix of causes, and the humans that got involved, we really wouldn't call them drunks from the pub. These are pretty smart, programmers, graphics artists that got interested, like you and I did, researchers. One particular person said that they just got tired of waiting around for something to happen in the cold of the UK summer. It can be cold. You might need a down jacket in the summer there. And they just thought, let's go down and make a small one, and we'll communicate with the intelligence. And it kind of became fun. Like, okay, let's make a bigger one. So they weren't really like hoaxing. They were trying to create a communication. But you have all of this involved, and I think for a lot of people, and it's not your fault, the researchers who knew what was going on with the even human-made ones were not talking about it for a variety of reasons. I mean, people who have conferences like to have full seats sold and so forth. So you know what, I'm going that direction. We were not told the whole truth, even by the human circle makers or the people that knew of human circle making activity. We're not talking about it. They told me this later. So a little duplicitous there. But still, it's a complex phenomenon with a lot of different causes. And if you want to read about the original phenomena, that Terry Wilson book, and again, it's available, it's in reprint. You can get a copy. You'll see all the history of these very strange circles over the years in UK, in Canada, US, so forth, that are unexplainable.
I love it. We got about 2 minutes to go here, Simeon. I know you have a book on crop circles. Make sure you let our audience know.
And this is the one, by the way, open your minds. I think you can get this for $1.99 tonight on Kindle. I think Bob said he just did this. It just goes a couple days and then it goes back to its regular price, $7.95 or whatever. So if you want to pick up a copy, it's pretty inexpensive. And this is all about my experience with crop circles and RV and fractal geometry and sort of my attempt to make sense. This book is, by the way, about 22 years old. And I still feel like it's accurate. I don't think I'd change anything I said in there. We know a lot more about these phenomena than we did at the time. But this is, if you want to read about what I'm telling you here about our experience with these particular circles and walking around in them and seeing all the devices stop working, that's the one to get.
Right on. It's always such a pleasure to have you here because you're so open-minded to the weird and strange, but it isn't weird and strange to you. It's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so, Dave. I believe that a lot of what we consider it strange is that we're just not really looking at it because we're afraid to break the mold. We want to fit in the pattern we were taught to be as kids and adults, to play the game and play it safe. As Pink Floyd said, would you rather have a walk-on part in a war or a lead role in a cage? So when you want to go outside the cage, you want to look at these phenomena. And I just think it's science that we don't understand yet, which is exciting. It's new principles. We're dealing with a lot of these phenomena at once, Dave. And it's good to open our minds to various possibilities. We don't know what sort of contact is coming our way. So.
Dr. Simeon Hine, everybody. Coming up next, Swamp Dweller and little Timmy James of the UFO Report. Hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio is next.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
Amazing as per usual, my friend.
Yes, thanks a lot, Dave. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for covering all those topics and keep an open mind.
That's right. That's right, my friend. I will let you go get some sleep. You take care, and we'll chat soon, okay?
Okay. See you another time, Dave. Take care,
my friend. Bye-bye. Simeon Hine, everybody. Love him. Love him. Be right back. Hi, Bombshell Bomber. right. No less than a minute. Thank you to Richard ×2, Human Carl ×2, Necessary Dialogue, Cosmic Joe, Walter, Science Bob, Lala Bright, Mama Catherine, Latchkey, and Richard ×2 again. Really appreciate it. Little Timmy James is here. Ron the Pipe Fitter, welcome to SOR Chat. We'll add Deborah Rooney to the Super Chats as well. Thank you, my dear. Don't forget you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So make sure you check them on out and go have some fun there. Here we go. Here we go, the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. We very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, SACAD. SACAD is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. I've been listening to this show for quite some time now. I also love to read scary stories on the internet, but I thought it was time to finally share one of my own. I don't know if it's a cryptid, but I don't know where else to share this. This happened quite some time ago. I was about 19 when it happened and almost had forgotten about it until my friends had brought it up. We all were trying to forget about it subconsciously, I'd say. This happened back in July of 2017 in Greer, Arizona. There were 7 of us in the group, including my boyfriend at the time, and we wanted to do some distant camping for my birthday despite the increase in mountain sickness cases. The term they told me was off-grid camping, but it was much further than most people would go. We packed up our friend's FJ Cruiser and set out for our destination. We were given by some random person who knows the area. We could only drive so far before we had to get out and hike the rest of the way, which was to be expected. Once we reached our destination, we wasted no time prepping some beers and beginning to get drunk and smoke as you do when you're young and dumb. We even had some people pass by who thought we were the authorities. We set up camp, and by the time we were done, it was beginning to get dark out and just in time for the spooky stories. My boyfriend and I did not last long with the stories because we had fallen asleep. We honestly got a little too cross-faded between the drinks and the joints, and if I'm being honest, we went to bed pretty early. So did my other friends, though. Only 3 were up late telling the stories from what I got. My boyfriend and I share some intimate moments before ultimately falling asleep. So here's where it starts to get disturbing. I was in and out of consciousness, but I remember hearing the zipper to the tent open slowly. I didn't know anything of it then because I was gone, if you know what I mean. The next thing I remember is my boyfriend weakly touching my elbow as if I was, facing him. I didn't really wake up because I thought maybe he was just trying to wake me up, until I heard him gasping for air. When my eyes opened, I saw this dark, clouded figure with an ugly, disgustingly disfigured face hovering over my boyfriend with his mouth open. I screamed as loud as I could and ran out of the tent towards the fire, practically naked, before I stumbled into the dirt. I remember seeing an older man come from the woods yelling out, "I'm a park ranger," with a gun, rushing to the tent. In my panic, I remember looking around at all my friends coming out of their tents and surrounding me, making it hard to see what was happening with my boyfriend. The voices of all my friends talking at once were messy as I filled with worry and grief, leaving my boyfriend alone in that tent with whatever the freak that thing was. Then a second younger man came out from a similar area of the woods. That's when I noticed the park ranger was no mere man. He looked off and began to shriek, just like this creature who was shrieking in pain as people jumped on the tent and tried to get my boyfriend. The older man, who I thought was a park ranger, began to look at us with demonic eyes. My friends and I watched in disbelief as the younger person began to pour what looked like water onto this creature and older man. They both began screaming and shaking violently. They both eventually gurgled from the liquid and ran off into the woods, never to be seen or heard from again, at least by us. My boyfriend, he was incredibly shaken, but he was okay ultimately. He stood up, got out of the tent, and was trembling. He could barely breathe. He was coughing up a lung. I'm not entirely sure what was happening. He explained it very similar to that scene from Harry Potter where the Dementor comes and sucks out their soul. That's what he said it felt like. He just couldn't breathe. Don't ask me what we saw that night, or who those people were, or that creature or fake park ranger was. I'm thankful to be alive, because I know if they didn't show up, we would have all probably been in the following headline of the paper.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another spooky story. If you want more just like that, just head over to YouTube, type in Swamp Dweller, and it'll be right there. Thousands of stories right at your fingertips, just like that. And from the swamp to the stars, we head over to little Timmy James and the drone report.
That is an interplanetary flying space saucer. You have made me very angry. Very angry indeed.
Little Timmy James and the UFO report. Before we get to the amount of drones that are out there, Tim, I got a bone to pick with you. Well, why don't we have your microphone?
I don't know.
Oh, there you go. Now we got it.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. I got a bone to pick with you, my man.
Dun, dun, dun.
So this morning,
Yes.
I pull into the Tim Hortons drive-thru, and who happens to be in front of me but little Timmy James?
What can I say?
And he's giving me the wave, and I'm cool with that.
Mhm.
And it's one of them split line drive-thrus. So he goes on one side, I go on the other. I'm having a conversation with Merle at the same time. It's a good time. And his order goes before me. In true friendship fashion,
Oh, God.
he did not even buy me my coffee. Did not even buy me my ice cap. He just paid for his own and sped off like a jerk that he is. I'm sitting there in the drive-thru. I'm like, I literally said to the lady, "Did he pay for me?" And she's like, "No." Like, you're kidding me. My friend did not even pay for me. She's like, "Nope, you got to pay on your own." I'm like, "You son of a gun."
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. That's a fair enough bone to pick. Oh, gosh. Yeah. I wasn't even thinking, man. I was just starving to death and I was late. Sorry, buddy. I'll buy you a coffee.
Oh man, that's true friendship right here. I'll remember that the next time I see you in the drive-thru.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the guy behind me's paying.
That's exactly what I'm going to say.
Uh-huh.
Yep. So, do we even have a UFO report, or is it just a drone report?
I'm staying off the drones right now. I'm just every single thing you look at is drones, pictures and explanations, and I'm done with it. So I've got a couple of small things. Nancy Mace was in the news again today, so she is still pushing and she's still whacking people in the shins with a hockey stick. So obviously, the South Carolina Republican argues that an overclassification of data, including reports involving military and commercial pilots, close and sometimes dangerous encounters with unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or UAP, only fuels more questions and undermines Americans' faith in their government. Miss May cited the annual budget for the Pentagon's Arrow as one example of unnecessary secrecy. I know how much Arrow costs every year. I know how much they're requesting for their future budget, but I can't tell you that number, and it's not zero. I can tell you that number, and it's pretty steep. Because that number is classified, she told the Washington Times in an exclusive interview. In a wide ranging conversation, Miss Mace also said it's imperative that the US government remain aggressive in cyberspace and push back against hacking operations by adversaries, in particular China. And she spoke highly of tech billionaire Elon Musk, who is heading President-elect Donald Trump's commission to improve government efficiency, and his social media platform X, which he said is challenging the power and influence of the left-leaning legacy media outlets in getting previously suppressed viewpoints. I think disruption is good right now, 100%, because disruption leads to truth, she said. Ms. Mace, who is the chair of the House Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Government Information, presided over the remarkable congressional hearing this month that included claims by witnesses that the government has operated a decades-long sorry, just lost my total screen again. So basically, she went into this and she is super upset. She's calling everybody out. She wants all of this to come out onto the carpet. She's not going to stop. She's pushing forward, and she's requesting further budget explanation, right? But she's, like she says, she can't tell you the numbers. She can't get into it right now. And yeah, she's not giving up. She's a dog on a bone. And like she said, she knows how much it costs to run the place, right? But
The question is, why can't she give the public the number?
I don't know. That's the weird part. Well, I think because it's classified. I don't understand how, budget would be classified with Arrow, but who knows?
That is absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely ridiculous that a government program,
Right.
which is funded by taxpayer dollars,
Mm-hmm.
and the sitting politician who is talking about this cannot discuss the number publicly.
Does not make sense. It really doesn't. And like I say, she just is not going to stop. And there's bombshell accusations that she's challenging. She's at it. And yeah, I guess she was kind of took the week off and then decided to deviate from the drone story and put herself back out in the forefront. And I mean, she's even claiming still that she is sure that there's a UFO crash retrieval program out there, and she wants it disclosed. She's wants it out there. She wants everybody to know about it. Who knows?
Well, it just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all.
I'm actually blown away by that.
Mhm.
Blown away because that just adds to the game. Like we're talking about trying not to make UFOs a game. We're trying to get serious about this.
Agreed.
And all that's played is games.
Mhm.
And the politicians, no offense to Nancy Mace or anybody else, if their hands are tied, they're tied. But when does the transparency come to fruition?
Ugh, your guess is as good as mine. It's a good question. Like, I mean, come on. What I'm finding is it's exactly that. You're saying it's a game, and what I'm getting from it is it just seems that, you've got Burchett that's out there telling people, what I've read before, that this is dangerous. There's, it's covert and all this sort of stuff. And Nancy Mace is even saying too, she's like, these things that are flying around and right at this point in time, these drones or whatever, are they Chinese? Are they Iranian? Are they Russian? Like nothing's coming out. And she's had it. It's basically what it is. She's had it. I want everything up and above board. This needs to be accounted for. So we'll see what happens later on in the week, or if she gets quieted down, or she keeps stirring the pot, man.
Well, I mean, stir the pot all you will. You could throw the tantrum all you want.
Mhm.
Okay, but if you can't be public about it, that's where I think American citizens need to be concerned on this subject.
Yeah.
What's the big secret? How much is it? Is it 2 million? Is it 15 million? Is it 100 million? Which are all numbers that are a drop in the bucket for
True.
U.S. defense spending.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I'm not sure, but we'll find out. Well, we probably, who knows if we'll find out. Is it just more hot air? Is it just more posturing? I'm not even sure right now with her, but so far she's proved to be, like I say, a pit bull, and I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose.
Look, I'm not really, I'm not one to condemn Nancy Mace because I thought the job her and Anna Paulina Luna did at the hearing, I'm very impressed with the way they were attacking this topic. They weren't asking the dumb questions of swamp gas or little green men or Venus. They were going right at it. And unfortunately, the panel that they chose was basically saying, we don't know, we don't know, we don't know. And I can see where that frustration is building. Maybe this is something that needs to be, she needs to put a bill together and try to get it passed. Maybe that'll happen after January 20th. Maybe she goes to Doge and gets Vivek and Elon to do something about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I was in her shoes and kept on getting hogtied by the Pentagon on this subject, that is something I would be looking at.
No question.
Tell us what the budget is. And if you're not going to tell us, we're going to get Doge to open it up.
And I'm sure that Doge, I guess, or however you want to pronounce it, I'm sure that they would love to do that. They would love to do that because, I mean, they've got to create the job for themselves. And in theory, who knows? Who knows? Maybe this is all going to work. And this may open up some books that have been locked closed for a lot of years.
All right. JSCO is saying, sorry to mention drones, but I would love to know why the U.S. hasn't brought any of these things down. What's your opinion?
My opinion. I think we just, I think that we discussed it last night. I think that I think we both you and I both agreed that the reason they're tests, they could possibly be tests. They're creating this thing. So there's, they're deviating their attention, right? So it's such a simple thing. You would think it's such a simple thing that if there's a threat over these highly, like we were talking about, these highly expensive weaponry and aircraft and stuff like that, I can't see these guys sitting back having a smoke and a cup of coffee going, we aren't too worried about it. They have to know what it is. That's what I think that the bottom line is. They have to know what it is. And I think that, by the lack of their response, I don't think that they're too worried about it being anything adversarial, if that makes any sense.
What else you got for us?
Well, I got a little story here from history. So this is from British Columbia, where you and I are from, and this is out in Duncan. So this is a story of Granger Taylor. He's a 32-year-old mechanical prodigy from Duncan. He was deeply passionate about machinery and outer space. Born on October 7th, 1948, Granger experienced a difficult childhood on Vancouver Island, marked by the tragic drowning of his father in an accident near their family cabin on Horn Lake. Leaving school around the 8th grade, Granger began working in a local mechanical shop where he demonstrated an exceptional talent for repairing and constructing a wide variety of items, ranging from toys, airplanes, and locomotives. Additionally, he created a life-size spaceship replica on his parents' farm using scrap metal, old car parts, and satellite dishes. Granger occasionally slept in the makeshift spacecraft and asserted that he communicated with extraterrestrial beings through both his dreams and his CB radio. So on November 29th of 1980, he left a note on the door of his parents' room that read, "Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien spaceship. As as recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe, then return. I'm leaving behind all my possessions to you, as I will no longer require the use of any. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide to help. Love, Granger. In his will, he crossed out the words death and replaced it with departure. On the back of the note, Granger sketched a map featuring Waterloo Mountain, located near his residence at Sominos Lake, and marked an X on it. The purpose of this map remains uncertain. Granger drove off in his pink Datsun pickup truck, last seen departing a local diner at around 6:30, never to be seen again. His disappearance prompted an extensive search by both law enforcement and family members, and it wasn't until 1986 that fragments of his truck, along with some bones, were discovered in a dynamite blast area on Mount Prevost, approximately 15 miles from his home. Interestingly, the blast site was in proximity of the X marked on the Granger's map. Despite this cause of the explosion and the identity of the remains were never definitively established. To this day, Granger Taylor's story and case continues to be one of the most enigmatic and captivating unsolved mysteries in Canadian history.
I want to investigate this case so bad.
Right?
Now, he believed that he was a contactee.
Mm-hmm.
And many people believe that this is a closed case because his vehicle was found on the mountain.
Right.
That was blown apart by dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there's still question, though, whether that was his actual body parts in there. Now, to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, this is a closed case. It was him taking his own life.
Mm-hmm.
But the people around him said he was never depressed. He was the town fix-it man.
Yeah.
He had built airplanes and trains with like an 8th grade education.
Right.
And people would bring him to take vehicles to him to break down motors. And he just naturally knew how to fix things and build things. And in fact, he even built a UFO in his yard.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the great Canadian mysteries, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, hard to believe. He said he'd be gone for 42 days. Well, it's been, I believe, 42 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
No, I remember reading this years ago, and I was like, oh, yeah. And I stumbled across it today, and it was like, oh, it's the anniversary of that today. That's so cool. So, yeah.
I think this story needs a private investigator. It needs quality ufologists like us. And it needs a lot more in-depth coverage than just a headline, this guy went missing because he was a UFO wingnut.
Yeah. Exactly.
It needs more than that. Totally needs more than that. But that's just my thinking on it.
Yeah.
And today's the anniversary.
Yep. It is.
Amazing. Wow. Little Timmy James, it is always great to have you on the show. Thanks for not buying me breakfast this morning.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm assuming we will not see you on Saturday for the final day of hunting. So I'll just do that. It'll be like the Tim James, everybody. Coming up next is the Dave 101. Pissed off about drones. We'll be right back.
This is Spaced Out Radio and your host, Dave Scott.
If you want to stick around, you can.
I'm going to probably crash out, but I've got the... What's that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, crash out on Tim Hortons, crash out on hunting, crash out early on the show. So,
what's going on Saturday with Rob?
What do you mean?
Aren't you going? He said you were going on the show with him or something on Saturday.
I'm going to go in the final hour because that's the 10-year anniversary of SOR.
Right. Okay.
But Saturday is final day of hunting season.
No, definitely. Yeah, possibly. I don't even know, man. I can't even promise that. I know. I've got the worst echoing in my headphones tonight. It's like I'm in a tunnel.
Yeah, we're hearing it on this end too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Once again, we want to remind our American listeners, if you're on the West Coast, you have half an hour to get to the lineups, okay, and get to the store. We need some brawling here, people. If you are listening from a lineup right now, all right, whether it's Target, Best Buy, Circuit City, Walmart, wherever, goddamn, let us know. We need to have you here, man. We need to have you ready for some brawling time.
Absolutely.
Yep. Oh my god.
And film it.
Yes. Film it. All right, buddy.
All right, dude.
Hit me up tomorrow.
Oh, I most certainly will.
All right, brother. Take care.
I'll buy you breakfast.
Yeah, right. If I see you.
Later, dude. Good night, everybody.
You'll buy me breakfast, but I'll be the guy ahead of you.
Good night.
Right. Good night, buddy. Jules, this isn't for me, okay? This isn't for Dave's Jollies. This is for getting America back to where it needs to be. All right? Let's get back to the way it was. After a solid meal on Thursday, we're fed, we're ready to beat the tar out of each other for that new PS5, that new Nintendo game box, televisions, any sort of toy for the kid. Come on, we can do this, America. We could do this. Paul Demon, see, that's the wrong attitude to have. There should be pointy sticks there. You should have baseball bats with barbed wire on them. You should be going with brass knuckles. Let's go. Let's make this happen. That's right, Bomber. This is your year to take back the big win. Don't let the corporate delivery machine win here. Get down there and start kicking some ass. Push some children over. Shove those senior citizens. All right, them coming at you with their bingo daubers. Okay, you show them who's boss. Okay. An 80-inch television, flat screen, is well more worth the safety of children and elderly. Wrong attitude to have, Deborah Rooney. Wrong attitude to have. Okay? The world needs to see this. We need to know America is back. This is the only way to prove it. Black Friday. Big thank you tonight to JSCO, Deborah Rooney, Cosmic Joe, Necessary Dialogue, Human Carl ×2, Richard ×2, Mama Catherine, Walter, Latchkey, Science Bob, Richard ×2, and La 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 La, Bright. Warden Dragon, how are you? That's right, Kimberly Burgess. Don't forget to wear a helmet. Bring an oxygen mask if you need it. Paramarv, there we go. Thank you very much. Here we go, everybody, in a couple seconds. Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's final half hour. My name is Dave Scott. This is the show of the weird and strange, and we hope you're enjoying tonight's episode. We bring it to you each and every night. Want to remind everybody that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. It's that time of the week, that time of the night, where I yell at each and every one of you to get off my lawn. It's a Dave 101.
Open up the door, it's Dave! Who? Dave, D-A-V-E! What is this?
Dave's not here!
It's the Dave 101.
I can see you're really upset about this. I honestly think you ought to sit down calmly, take a stress pill, and think things over.
Leave the killer out! Yeah! Leave the killer!
It's a mess.
All right, let's get right to it. We were right. To the UFO community, or the UApology community, we were right. We've taken so much heat over the last number of months and years trying to explain to people UFOs are not UAPs, and UAPs definitely are not UFOs. But since 2017 and the real takeoff of new modern ufology, we have seen the 2017s come on in and basically tell us that everything we did in the past, okay, from listening to stories to unchecked, unvalued eyewitness testimony to everything in between, it's all about UAPs and not UFOs. Gone are the days her Travis Waltons, the Andreassens, the Betty and Barney Hills, and the Calvin Parkers of the world. No, their stories don't matter. This is all about nuts and bolts technology and the potential invasion, according to Tom DeLonge of Blink 182, that the aliens are coming to get rid of us, and we need to put nuclear weapons in space so that way they cannot annihilate our civilization. Yes, the fear-mongering is massive right now, and the more we talk about this subject publicly, the more we actually see these videos of drones being flown around. Drones. Not UFOs, people. Drones. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't UFOs visiting military bases or airports like we saw that strange orb in the sky in the UK, where the photograph had this orb hovering a couple feet off the ground. The photograph was taken from the cockpit of an airline pilot. To me, on the close-up, that photo actually looks like somebody duct taped a ball and then dropped it. But could it be something not of this world? I have no idea. I want to believe. However, don't you find it a little ironic that right now these UAP/drones are taking all of the news? You see, when they developed the UAP term and really popularized it after 2017, and this is my opinion, I'm probably going to take some heat over this, don't care. But what they did was they identified anything anomalous in the sky as a UAP, which included drones, balloons, mylar balloons, weather balloons, birthday balloons, Batman balloons of photos taken from FA-18 cockpits to everything in between. Okay? They took this and they ran with it, that if there's a seagull carrying, I don't know, a fish stick from Captain Highliner, that is now UAP. They hid the UFO subject within the UAP in order to try and de-escalate it as alien technology. I've had that conversation with people on the inside before, and they say that's exactly what it is. And now it's all about drones. If you listen closely to many people who speak on this topic, you will see that they often will designate a difference between drones and UFOs. They will connect drones to the UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, but they do not connect it to UFOs. Yet they will use UFOs and UAP as different anomalies in the same sentence. Many insiders that I have talked to, I'm going to say about 6 or 7 now, which is still qualifies as many, have told me there is a difference between UAP and UFO. The way the public has taken off with the UAP catchphrase is because it is easier for them, it is trendy, and it makes them sound more professional. In fact, they're not sure what UFOs are. One source even told me that he believes over 90% of what we see flying in the sky right now is not UFO. But it's that 10%, the 10% encounters that we cannot control, that are unidentified, that are of concern. Now, let's break this down even further. If this is an adversary flying drones over U.S. military installations, over the Pentagon, over the White House in D.C., and the Congressional buildings, and every beautiful piece of art that is structured in that city, why are they putting lights on it? I want you to think about that for a second. If I am an adversary of the United States, much like Dear Leader in Canada is, I'm taping up those lights or I'm disconnecting them. I'm going to make myself sure that my drone is blacked out, that nobody can see it. Sure, you might be able to hear it, but you're not going to be able to see it on the darkened sky. Why am I doing that? It's called secrecy. So if these are human-made drones, why do they have lights on them? Let's think about that. All we have to do is look at the war in Ukraine right now, where drone technology has really revolutionized modern-day warfare on the ground, especially trench warfare. Both sides are literally using drones, both daytime and night, to kill each other, to attack each other. Do you really think a Ukrainian drone pilot is going to have lights on his drone while flying over a Russian army to drop little miniature bombs on their soldiers? No, they're going to see the lights. They're going to see them. They're not going to do that. So why, if these are adversaries, say it's Iran or India or the UK or Pakistan or China, Russia, North Korea, whoever it may be, do you really think they're going to put lights on a drone and then fly it over a military installation? The other interesting point that I want you to think of with these drone incursions, the U.S. has the technology to bring those down. They have, and I'm not talking about guns, but they have lasers and other type of bioenergy weapons that if it is a drone, they could be brought down immediately. Why haven't they done that? To our knowledge, they haven't. So now you have drones with lights on them, which makes them easy to fire upon, but these military bases are not dropping them. Does that make sense? My conclusion on this is as follows. I think they're U.S. technology. I think that they are trying to make the U.S. look like they are in a vulnerable position, knowing that the defense budget is going to be questioned after never balancing its budget and once again not accounting for over $3 trillion. Not billion, trillion. That's scary. If you and I cannot balance our budget, we do not eat. We do not have gas to put in our vehicle. Sure, we want to go to Starbucks or Tim Hortons or McDonald's or wherever to grab that morning coffee, but if we can't afford it, we can't afford it. We can't just say, well, put that on my tax bill. It's not how it works. Yet the Pentagon has been getting away with this for decades. That trillions of dollars, of course it's going into black technologies and black projects. Of course it's going into this. Why wouldn't they? With the increase of drone warfare, do we really think that the United States military is not testing drones on its own bases in order to see how far they can get? And of course they're going to light up their drones. And I'm not talking the big winged aircraft where they sit out flying these things over the Middle East from a base in Nevada, which they actually do. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm talking the little mini piloted drones. You know, the type of drone that you could go down to Best Buy and pick up for your son or daughter's birthday or Christmas. We're talking that. These drones are part of a bigger problem. And I can tell you right now, I got an email during this show from an insider who literally sent me an email saying, this is leading up to something. This is leading up to something, and we should be concerned. Why should we be concerned? Well, if you could blame the aliens for invading American military airspace, that $3 trillion that is missing, well, guess what? The new administration coming in will just turn a blind eye to it. And I believe that's what they're hoping. Never mind the more sinister things that could happen with this. This is what they do. There is no UFO threat. The United States of America and the United States military is the only country in the world that has provided a threat narrative for UAP, not UFOs. They're blaming the aliens before the aliens have even had a chance to get down here. And when you have people hitting the panic button, especially when it comes to defense in America, that means dollars. And I know personally that there are companies around the world right now vying for those disclosure for dollars, bucks in their pocket. It's going to make a bunch of shareholders millionaires and billionaires overnight. Now, I have no problem with the capitalist system. I do have a problem in fear-mongering in order to make money off of people, especially taxpayers' dollars. But that's what defense is. That's what the military is all about. No defense contracts, no money. No money, no budgets. And right now, in the state of the world, the way it is, we need a strong United States military. But do we have to do it via fear-mongering about alien technologies that cannot be explained when they already know what they have, but they're just not allowed to say it? Much like Tim in the UFO report stated, Nancy Mace tried to get a budget number to release to the public. She couldn't get it. There is a block on that. She knows the number, but she is not allowed to release how much American taxpayers are paying for the Arrow program to say nothing to see here, just like Chief Wiggum off of The Simpsons. The wool is being pulled over our eyes. These are not UFOs. These are not alien. This is American technology testing out American response systems on American military bases and American airports. Yes, this is also happening around airports around the world. And if you notice, the countries that are disclosing this all happen to be allies of the United States. Is this a coincidence? I definitely think so. UAP are not UFOs, and UFOs are not UAP, and they are not looking for UFOs. That's your Dave 101.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
Loud noises!
I am good at things, fighting and reading the news.
It's time once again for Spaced Out Radio's Weird News of the Week.
If you have a dog and you're looking for a house sitter for your dog, well, this lady in Nova Scotia, you may not want to have her here. I mean, sure, she'll probably treat your dog excellent. Your dog's going to be happy, but it's the entertainment that your dog is going to see that is kind of questionable. Here's why. An OnlyFans content creator in Nova Scotia, one of Canada's eastern provinces, was caught filming explicit videos while dog sitting in her clients' homes. Yeah. Amanda Jowdery LeBlanc from Blandford, Nova Scotia, a nice quaint place, was shocked when she came across a video promoting the dog sitter's OnlyFans account and recognized her own home being used as a setting. I'm still shocked by it, to be honest with you, Jowdery LeBlanc said. It just feels like, for a lack of a better term, violating. The telltale sign the homeowner's home in on was a uniquely patterned tile on their bathroom floor. She paid the $7.99 monthly subscription price to the unidentified dog sitters page to confirm her suspicions and found videos of a woman masturbating in her bedroom, her bathroom, and posing nude in her backyard pool. Everyone can do what they want. I don't care, she says. People have a right to make money. I just don't want it done in my home. I think that's a fair request, don't you guys? Yeah, the homeowner confronted the dog sitter, who was initially unapologetic and did not seem to understand why Jowdery LeBlanc was so upset. However, she eventually agreed to take down the videos filmed at Jowdery LeBlanc's house. Jowdery LeBlanc told the outlet that the dog sitter had always been reliable when she and her husband used her, and their pets, which were not in any of the women's explicit videos, were always happy. Well, of course they were. They were sitting getting a free entertainment. She even recommended her to other local families whose homes also appeared on the OnlyFans page. OnlyFans did not say whether the dog sitter breached any of the company's policies, but agreed to look into the situation if Jowdery LeBlanc reached out to them. Nova Scotia RCMP told the CBC that it could not say whether or not a crime was committed, since the incident was not reported to police. Jowdery LeBlanc does not intend to take any sort of legal action, but said she has learned her lesson and will be more cautious going forward regarding who comes into her home to look after her dogs. I'm just so disappointed that I trusted this person, she says. Now, if that was me, no, I wouldn't want to actually watch the incident happen. But if she was using my house, I can tell you, I would ask for a royalty fee. Yeah, you can keep my house in your videos, but pay me. Pay me. Why not? If you got a mortgage, that may make a couple of mortgage payments. I don't know. Then again, I wouldn't want to clean up any of the mess. Hey, would you ever pay $480 for a cup of coffee? Now, there's some coffee holics out there, okay? But in London, it's an enormous price to pay for a little cup of coffee. But the man behind the pitch promises it won't leave a bitter taste behind, as it comes with sweetener of a share of a dairy farm. A Scottish dairy is offering what bills as the UK's most expensive cup of joe, 272 British pounds, $480 Canadian, so about $6 American, for a flat white, a double shot of espresso top with a layer of steamed milk and fleeting work of foam art. Oh, you can't drink a coffee without the work of foam. The costly cup is actually a perk for purchasing shares in Moscow Organic Dairy's crowdfunding campaign to enlarge its sustainable operation and produce more milk. Investors who buy 34 shares in the farm get a certificate for a flat white that can be redeemed starting this weekend at one of the 13 coffee shops in Scotland that use the dairy's milk. That's actually kind of cool. That's actually really kind of cool, actually. I don't drink coffee, but that's kind of cool. Police thought that a shoe thief was on the loose at a kindergarten in Japan until a security camera caught a furry culprit in action. What did they catch? Well, a little weasel was breaking into the school and stealing the kids' shoes. They got video of the culprit. He is known to stash items, and some people keep weasels as pets. Yeah, the weasel scattered the shoes all around the school. Took 50 for them before he was busted by local authorities. As we say hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Ball, rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, Elgin, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X, hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I know you're out there somewhere. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We own the night, Mr. Bumblefoot. We need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. All right. Good stuff, everybody. That's a good show. Give yourself a round of applause. You all did well tonight. You all did well. All did well. Hold on. What am I doing here? Oh, we got to go here. Got to go here. Got to go here. Hi, gorgeous Amy Vegas O. How are you? We'll be back there May 1st to 4th. May 1st to 4th. Who's coming to Vegas with us? With me and Merle to hang out. Who's coming to Vegas? I'll be there. 1 second here. Just getting all the editing stuff available and ready. All right. Quickly do this. This would be, who can we do this? All right. There we go. Oh, Amy Vegas. Oh, I'm hoping you can make time for us. Love her. Love her. If you ever get a chance to meet Amy Vegas O in Vegas, go say hi. She shakes a good hand. She really does. And she's tall. And she has nice eyelashes. She's like, shut up, Dave. Shut up. That's right. I know you're laughing, Amy. I've met a lot of our great fans out there. And you guys are all amazing. You really are. And honestly, this is why, like, when we were doing the fan party the first 3 years, this is why I was encouraging all of you guys to come, is because it is so cool to meet your fellow listeners and the listeners of this show. And let's see here. Let me just quickly deal with Ron. Ron the pipe fitter. How you doing, my friend? I don't have a membership up here. I haven't done the membership thing. I'm still debating on that. But how can we put it? As long as you hit subscribe and like, that's all I really care about. But really appreciate you asking, though, man. Thank you very much. That's very cool. Maybe I will set up the whole membership thing. I don't even know how those work. I think what scares me is, like, when you get into the membership stuff like that, like YouTube and Patreon, they want you to do a bunch of different types of categories. Like different videos and different this. And if you don't keep it up, they kind of hammer you on that. And I'm really bad due to my daytime job and with my family. I'm really bad at keeping up on that stuff. Ron the pipe fitter, if you want to donate, we do have the super chat option. And that is it, man. That is it. But thank you for your consideration on that. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I'll hit up Sweet Robbie G on that. Will the Lucha Libre brothers do a show in Vegas? I don't know. They're not invited. I mean, what? I don't think they'll show up. Hope not. But anyways, getting back to meeting the fans, that's one of the greatest experiences I've had doing this radio show. And I think going back to Vegas where everybody can kind of enjoy things is going to be really good. I'll look into the membership thing, Paramarv. Find out how that works. Oh, right on, Ron. Ron, you're in Illinois, correct? We're glad that you joined the chat room, man. It's Friday. You know that means, USA? If you're still listening to this, you should be listening to this on your cell phone while you're making your way down to the local malls. And if you got to get in line and stand in line all night, please do. If anybody tries to steal your spot, that's when it's on. We met some cool people. Marty Burback's a great guy. Got to meet Trucker Andrew in Nebraska. Of course you have a nail appointment, Amy Vegas. Oh, your nails are like 4 inches long each. You're like a grizzly bear. You could carve somebody's face out with those. Oh, Ron, have you ever seen the Chicago Mothman? I remember when I flew into O'Hare a few years ago. It was awesome seeing like the dinosaurs in there. Amy Vegas O's nails are like switchblades. All she does is she goes, shoots her hand up like that, and the knives pop out. It's her defense mechanism. Christine, are you coming to Vegas? Hi, Runa. How are you? Oh, wow, Ron. Your grandpa or great grandpa told you about the dog man on Bray Road? Ooh, that's scary cool. Scary cool. Who's on tomorrow night? Oh, Wayne and Michelle are coming back on. Very cool. Wayne Braden. Talk some UFOs and stuff. Michigan UFOs and paranormal encounters. That'll be fun. I like them. That'll be great fun. So cool. Tim Mothman and his goatee will be in Vegas with us. Guaranteed he's going to respond, "You betcha," or something along those lines. You know what I love about Tim Mothman and his goatee? When he sits beside me at a slot machine, I win. It's true. He's my good luck troll. Just catching up on this email here. Just trying to see what I can say here and what I can't. All right. I gotta keep that question I keep that one quiet. Sorry about that. Are you working right now, Ron? Get these loaded up. Then I'll have time to concentrate. All right, there we go. Ron, if you're on Facebook, add me on Facebook. And then we can figure that out on Messenger. All right. You don't have to gamble with us, Amy Vegas. Oh, you could just stand behind us and cheer us on. All right, Wayne and Michelle tomorrow night on Spaced Out Radio, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. Thank you tonight to Paramarv, JSCO, Deboruni, Joe, Necessary Dialogue, Human Carl ×2, Mama Catherine, Latchkey, Richard ×2, La 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 La, Bright, Science Bob, Walter. Thank you for the love. Don't forget, if you're new, hit subscribe, ring that bell, and we will see you all tomorrow, everybody. Love you lots. See you soon.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.